In this video, you will learn about Autopsy. Autopsy is an open source forensic suite to analyze a disk image of a compromised Windows client. By completing this course, you will gain familiarity with key locations where forensic artifacts are typically found on Windows client machines, such as Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. The disk image used in this course was generated from a Windows 10 operating system with the most up-to-date version. You will learn how to search a forensic disk image in DD format for intrusion-related artifacts on a Windows client machine. Due to users' vulnerability, Windows client machines are often targeted by hackers through malicious file downloads or attachments. Important forensic artifacts to look for in Windows client machines include Windows event log files, event viewer files, and registry entries. By completing this course, you will gain valuable skills in identifying and analyzing these artifacts, enhancing your understanding of forensic investigation on compromised Windows systems. Before you jump into the practical, you must know 5 important terms. First, Autopsy. It is a powerful, open source forensic suite used for analyzing forensic images. Second is Event Viewer Files. It refers to the application, security, and system logs commonly found in C, Windows, WinEVT in modern Windows versions. Third is Scheduled Task. These are programs configured to run automatically, typically found in the C drive, Windows folder, System32 folder, and then tasks. Registry files. Registry files are significant Windows configuration files, including system, software, and SAM, often stored in C, Windows, System32, and config. Last is creation date. Creation date refers to a timestamp in Windows that aids in tracking when a file was introduced to the system. Here, you can see a complete diagram which represents the digital forensic process. So first is the collection. So collection of media is the very first step. Then comes the examination. So examination of data is the next step. Then analysis. Analysis of what? Analysis of information that we have collected. And then we have reporting. So we will report evidences. So what are digital evidences? There are many. Let's say emails, log files, backups, registry, audio video files, photos, user accounts, etc. So the first step is collection. So collection of data. Okay, identifying the data and labeling it is the very first step. Then the next is examination. So we will examine the collected data by using various different tools. Then comes the analysis. So we will perform analysis of data using different methods and techniques. And at last, there is reporting. So putting whatever we have found together so that we can represent the report to the client. So report include all the tools and techniques we have used, the process we have followed, the data we have acquired, and the evidence we have found at the end. So we will include all these things inside a report. In this video, you will learn how to load the disk from the compromised machine. So this is the very first step of forensic investigation. So here we are going to use a toolkit called as Autopsy, which also consists of Autopsy Forensic Browser. Again, it is a graphical user interface which helps us to collect, examine, analyze, and report the digital evidences, especially disk images. So let's see how to load the disk. Just double click on this tool. It's loading, so let's wait. Now here, select new case. Okay, so we are creating a new case. Just click on this new case. And now it asks for case name. Okay, so let's provide the case name. Let's say Windows 10 client. Now here on the base directory, click on browse, go to desktop and select this image folder. So click on select, done. Now here in case type, select single user. Now click on next. Okay, here in case number, we can type anything like Windows 100, etc. Okay, so type anything. So let's say we will type window client. It is not mandatory to use the number here, okay? You can give the word as well. So window client. Now here in the examiner name, you can type investigator or demo, sample, test, etc. whatever you want. So for now, let's use student. Okay. Now leave everything blank, but in real world, you have to fill out these things as well. But for now, just click on finish. Okay, so it is creating a case, creating a new case. Okay, so here we have the add data source window. So from this, we will select local disk. Okay, because it is asking us to select the type of data source you want to add. So we want to add local disk. So just click on it and click on next. Here it's asked for local disk. So go to select disk and let's select this one, drive 3. Now click on OK and click next. See, leave everything to default. Just click on next. Now here, leave all the boxes checked. Okay, do not interfere with any of the feature because we need all of them. Click on next. Now the tool will begin processing. Okay, so we have to wait. Now here you can see the process is completed and you can see an error which says non-critical errors. Just ignore it. Okay, simply click on finish here. Okay, so we have completed the first task. So you have created your first case. Now let's move towards the second task. Here you can see it is still processing, right? But that doesn't affect our next step. So let me minimize this. So guys, creating a new case is the very first step when performing forensic investigation, and you have learned it. In this video, you will learn how to analyze common locations for compromised artifacts. So suppose your intrusion detection system has sent you a notification regarding one of the machines has been hacked, and which is our Windows client. So let's analyze it. So let me open Autopsy. Now click on the plus icon here at the data sources. Now again click on this icon in front of physical drive 3. Now expand volume 7, which says basic data partition. Now expand the Windows folder. Now here look for system32. So let me scroll down. Here it is. So click on the plus icon. Now we have to search for Windows event folder. Here it is. Just explore it. Now click on logs. Here we have application.evtx file. So just right click on it. Select extract files. Click save and OK. Now scroll down and search for security. Here it is. Just repeat the same steps. Just right click, go to extract files, click on save and then OK. Now again same steps for system file. So extract files, save and OK. Okay, so let me minimize this and just open the image folder. Now open Windows 10 client and export folder. So here are the 3 important files that we have extracted. First, let's look on the system logs. So just double click on it and it will open in Event Viewer. Here you can see number of events are 6, only 6. But in real world, we have thousands of events. Now let me close this and let's open security. So we have security logs here. So let me show you a sample of event. Let's say this one. So just double click on it and it will open. Now you can see it says a user was created. Okay, so a user account was created on this compromised machine. So you can see account name is client. Scroll down and you can see the new account created, okay, with a super username. So you can see the name of the account in logs and it says password not required is enabled. You can also look for details. So you can see domain name, user ID, etc. Just close it. Now let's find out the schedule task. Now let's open the tool again and let's look for Windows folder and then System32. Now we have to look for task. Open task folder. When you open the task folder, you will see a file with the name updates. Now this file looks suspicious because this file was created during the same date and time of which we have got alert. Right click, select extract files and click on save and then OK. Now let's move to exports folder, images, Windows 10 client, then export and open updates. Open this file with Notepad. Now read the details of this file and here you can see it says under C drive it has window update.batch file. Okay, so this file is not a good one. So let's examine this file. Now let's get back to our tool and select volume 7. Now let me scroll down. Here we have a lot of files. So let's have a look on this file, okay, which says 127.0.0.1.pwd. Just select it and go to text and read the details. Here you can see the password hashes for all the users. So you can get the original password by cracking the hash by using online or offline tools. They are freely available. Now let's look for another file. So let's examine this file. Let me open the browser. So we have Google Chrome. Now let's open the VirusTotal. It's a free website which helps us to detect suspicious links, files, to detect malware and other breaches. So let me open. Let's upload the file. So desktop, images, Windows 10, export and window update. See what the result says. VirusTotal reported this file as a malware, backdoor or Trojan. Okay, so this file is not the good one. And then there are different tools and websites which are also warning us about this file. So hackers can place this file in different paths. The most known path is the Windows folder inside C drive, and then there is System32. Now before we move towards the next step, first search for config folder inside System32. Here it is. Just select it and here we have to look for three important files. First is SAM, now software, and then system registry keys. Now let me extract one by one. So first let's extract SAM file, save and OK. Now software, extract files, save and OK. And the last is system. Right click, extract files, save, OK. Done. Now we are all set for the next step. In this video, you will learn how to export the registry and read the files using Windows Registry Recovery Tool, that is WRR, this one. And the company name is MITech. So just double click on it. So you can see the complete name is MITech Windows Registry Recovery. Now go to File, click on Open. Now select the location. So desktop, image, Windows 10, and then export. Now open the SAM file. Now here select the SAM and click on Groups and Users. Expand the user section. Now here you will notice that there are 2 administrator accounts. Now it is highly suspicious. Why? Because in real world we have only 1 administrator account. So how to find out that which one is genuine and which one is created by the hacker? So the step is analyze both of them one by one. So let me open the first one. You can see the SID, which is 500. So remember, the default administrator account has always have a SID value of 500. It means this one is genuine. Now let me scroll to the another. Notice the ID is 1003. Okay, it means this is the administrator account created by the hacker. Now remember one more thing, that the original guest account has always have the SID value of 501, that is 501. So this way you can verify. Now let me close it and let's open the another file. So open. This time we will open the software. Select Windows installation and look for system install date. Okay. Now click on startup applications and you can view the additional information here. Let me close the file. Now let's open the system file and click on services and drivers, and you can see that these are the list of services which can turn on startup either automatic or manual way, and some services are disabled as well. So you will have a list of all the services available. So click on network configuration and then TCP IP. Okay, remember in the previous video I told you that we have received a notification that one of the system has been compromised. Okay, and this is the virtual machine which has been compromised, as you can verify with the IP address. This section is dedicated to Linux forensics only. So if you know about Windows forensics or not, that doesn't matter here, because Linux forensics investigation is completely different from Windows forensics. So what you will learn here? First, you will learn how to create the image of an compromised Linux machine using FTK Imager. Second, you will learn to examine a compromised Linux machine using autopsy. Third, you will learn how to analyze the most common locations of compromised artifacts. So let's get started. Before we start the practical, you must understand 5 important key terms. The first is FTK Imager. FTK Imager is a powerful and widely used software tool that enables users to create forensic images from digital devices. This free tool is commonly employed by forensic analysts and investigators to capture and preserve the content of storage media, such as hard drives or memory cards. By creating a forensic image, investigators can perform analysis and extract evidence while maintaining the integrity of the original data. Next is history file. The history file, often referred to as the command history or bash history, records the commands that a user has entered during their session on a Unix-like system. It keeps a chronological list of executed commands, including the command itself and the time it was executed. The history file can be a valuable resource for users to recall previous commands or for forensic investigators to reconstruct the actions performed by a specific user. Next is /etc/shadow file. Okay, so the /etc/shadow file is a critical file in Linux systems that stores the encrypted password hashes for the user accounts. Unlike the passwd file, which is used to contain password hashes, the shadow file enhances security by storing this sensitive information in a restricted file, only accessible to the root user or privileged processes. By storing password hashes in shadow file, it helps protect user credentials and prevents unauthorized access to plain text passwords. Then we have /etc/passwd. The passwd file is a system file found in Unix-like operating systems that stores essential user account information. It contains a list of usernames, user IDs, group IDs, user home directories, default shells, and other account-related details. While traditionally, the file used to store password hashes as well. Modern systems have moved the password hashes to the more secure shadow file. The passwd file, however, still plays a vital role in maintaining user account information and system functionality. The last is auth.log. So the authentication log file is an essential log file found in Linux-based systems. It records security-related events, including user authentication attempts, successful logins, failed login attempts, and other relevant information. Monitoring the auth.log file can help administrators identify unauthorized access attempts or potential security breaches, allowing them to take appropriate actions to safeguard the system. Now, please note that it's crucial to handle these files and tools with care, following legal and ethical guidelines, and ensuring appropriate authorization when working with sensitive information or performing forensic investigations. In this video, you will learn how to create an image using FTK Imager. FTK Imager is a free and powerful tool that allows us to view, create, and even mount disk images. So let's see how to use it. Just double click on it to open it. Go to File and select Add Evidence Item. Now here, select physical drive, which is by default selected, and click on Next. Okay, from the drop down list, select physical drive 4. Now click on Finish. Okay, now expand the physical drive 4 by clicking on the plus icon. Now just right click on the Metasploitable root and select Export Disk Image. Here click on Add button. Select raw DD, which is by default selected, and click on Next. Here leave everything blank. Okay, no need to worry. Just click on Next. Now it asks for image destination folder. Here we have to browse to the desktop and then the image folder. Click OK. You can verify the location. Now here in the image file name, let's type linux.td. You can give any name you want. Now here in the image fragment size, you have to specify 30,000. So 30000. Okay, 3 and 4 times 0. Simply click on Finish and now click on Start. Now the process has started, so we have to wait till it's get completed. So in this video, you have learned how to create a disk image using FTK Imager. And this time we have created the image of Linux operating system. Once this process gets completed, simply close the box and close the tool. That's it. And let's move forward to the next step. In this video, you will learn how to load the disk from the compromised machine. So in the previous video, we have created an image using FTK Imager. Now it's time to load the image into Autopsy. As you know that Windows uses file system types NTFS, that is New Technology File System. And it has also used FAT, FAT32, FAT16. FAT stands for File Allocation Table. But in Linux, it uses different. It uses ext3, ext4, etc. So ext stands for Extend File System, and it will also use RFS, that is Razor File Systems in Linux. So just open the Autopsy tool by double clicking on it. It's loading. So let's wait. Once loaded, it will give us 3 options. First, new case. Second is open recent case, and the third one is open case. So we will proceed with first option, that is new case. So click on new case. Now it asks for case name. So case name, let's say Linux. and base directory, go to desktop, select the image folder, click next. Now case number, you can type anything, so let me type Linux only. In the examiner name, let's type student. Click on finish. Now it will take few seconds. Now here in this window, we will proceed with the first option, default option, which says disk image or VM file. Click on next. Now here, click browse, go to desktop, image folder, and then the linux.dd. So here we are actually selecting the image that we have created using FTK Imager in the previous video. Now simply click on next. Here, leave all the boxes checked. Do not interfere with any options. We will need all of them. So click next. Now the tool has started processing. You can see it says data source has been added to the local database. Now files are being analyzed. Just click on finish. And here at the bottom you can see the process is still going on, but that will not going to affect our process. So let's move on the third part. The World Wide Web or WWW is a client or server system hosting various resources like documents, multimedia, and images. These resources are accessed through Uniform Resource Locators, that is URLs, and transferred via the Hypertext Transfer Protocol HTTP between web clients or browsers and servers. Documents on the web are built using Hypertext Markup Language HTML and contain hyperlinks for navigation. So you will analyze two popular browsers, Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox, examining their features and functionality. Before we start the practical, you must understand three important terms. First is World Wide Web, second is web servers, and third is web browsers. So let's start with WWW. The World Wide Web, commonly known as the web, is an internet-based system that allows users to access and share information through interconnected documents and resources. It is a collection of websites and web pages that are linked together using hyperlinks. Users navigate the web using web browsers. Next is web servers. Web servers are computer systems or software applications that host websites and web applications. They store the files and resources of a website and deliver them to web browsers upon request. When a user accesses a website, their web browser sends a request to the web server, which responds by providing the requested files, such as HTML documents, images, videos, etc. Third is web browsers. Web browsers are software applications that allow users to access and view websites on the World Wide Web. They interpret and display HTML documents, enabling users to navigate through web pages, follow hyperlinks, and interact with web-based content. Examples are Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, etc. In this video, you will understand the working of browsers. So browsers track the websites we visit, and then later this information can be used as an evidence in court cases. So first, we are using Kali Linux. So let me open the terminal. Here we will start the Apache web service. So simply type Apache CTL start. Now we will perform nmap on localhost. So 127.0.0.1. So we can see HTTP port number 80 is open and is working. So now let's close it and let's switch to another virtual machine, which is Windows 7. Now let's open the web browser and we will visit the website which is hosted on Kali Linux. So let me open any browser. Let's say we will open this old browser, Internet Explorer. I understand that Microsoft no longer provides support for this browser, but we are just using the virtual machine, so we can use this. Click on Ask Me Later and let's open the website IP address of the Kali machine, and you can see the default page. So close this web page. Now let's search for the history of this web browser. So you cannot see the menu bar here. So go to Tools, Toolbars, and select Menu Bar. Here under View, Explore Bars, and then History. Click on Today. You can see that we have visited this IP address and this web page. So this history can be used as the evidence. Now let's go to Tools, and we will go to In Private Browsing, that is incognito mode. And now let's repeat the same process, HTTP. So we have visited the same website. Click on Today, and you can see this is the old history and not this new one, because we have visited this website using private mode, and in private mode browser will not record our history. So you have learned that browser history can tell us a lot of things about the person, okay, what kind of things they search for, right? And there are many browsers like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Internet Explorer. I know this was replaced by Microsoft Edge, and then we have Safari browsers, etc. But each of them have person's browser history, okay, which will work as evidence. But if you use them in private mode or in incognito mode or in stealth mode, then in that case it will not track the websites we visit. In this video, you will learn how to analyze Google Chrome browser for forensics. Google Chrome does not save search history, URLs, cookies, etc. on Windows hard drives or in prominent files like index.dat. Instead, it stores this information in SQLite databases. To examine Chrome's databases, we can use an SQLite browser. The databases are located at C, users, username, app data, local, Google, Chrome, user data, default. So double click on SQLite browser. So we have SQLite database browser here. Now go to File and select Open Database. Select Users and then Student. Then go to App Data, Local, Google, Chrome, User Data, and Default. Now here we have all the records. So let's open the history. So select History and click on Open. So we are actually viewing the history file, but in the database structure. So go to Browse Data, and from here select URLs. So now we have the list of all the URLs that we have visited through Google Chrome. Now let's select the keyword search terms. Now these are the keywords that we were typed in the search field in the browser. Now let's select the segments. So here are the beginning parts of the URLs that we have typed into the URL field without any trailing subdirectories. Okay. Now to close it, just go to File and select Close Database. Right. Now go to File, select Open Database, select Cookies and Open. Now from here select Cookies. Now these are all the cookies dropped from various websites that we were visited, right? So this way we can analyze history and cookies of Google Chrome. Remember, your browser record your search history, okay, which will tell a lot about you as a person. And you know that Google Chrome is widely used because of the number of users using Google and its related services like Gmail, Google Drive, etc. In this video, you will learn how to analyze Mozilla Firefox. Firefox is similar to Chrome when we talk about storing their information in SQLite databases. First, let's open Mozilla Firefox and go to Tools and then select SQLite Manager. So we have directly opened this from the browser itself. Now here from the drop down list, we have to select Places and click on Go. Now let me increase the size. Let's select moz_host. Now this file stores the whole internet history. Now here click on Browse and Search. Now here is a list of all the websites that we were visited, and if you click on Moz Places, you will see the list of a complete URL path. Okay, here it is. Now from the drop down list, select cookies and click on go, and select cookies here as well from the left side. Now here is the list of all the cookies available in the Firefox. So this way you can search the history of Mozilla Firefox as well as cookies. In this video, you will learn how to analyze common locations of compromised artifacts. Suppose your intrusion detection system has sent you a notification regarding one of the machines has been compromised and has provided you the IP address of that machine, which we will verify at the end. So, first of all, we see the file system on the image. So, expand the data sources and then the Linux image. Now here in Linux, var directory is very important, this one, the last one. It will contain a lot of important files. So let's analyze it. So expand var directory. Now inside var we have log. So expand it and click on log. Now we will look for auth.log file. Here it is, this one. So double click on it, and the file will open here at below. Okay, if by default you are on the hex tab, you have to select text so that we can read it. You can increase its size. Here you can scroll down and you can read it. So session opened by root user UID 0. See, root user have always the UID 0. Now click on next page and let me scroll down. Here you can see that many attempts was made to get login with the Ubuntu user or TWR user. So you can see it says authentication failure. So someone has tried to crack the root password as well. Okay, UID 0 is for root, then fail password for invalid user, that is TWR, reverse of root. So you can read logs. Again, authentication failure, invalid user. So many attempts was made. It was like someone has tried brute force attack. And you can see it says failed password for root. But then the password has been accepted for root user. It means the hacker has got access into our system and has also created a new user with a TWR name. This one, see, it says new user with UID 1004. Okay. So it means this is suspicious. You can also see the timings when the user has tried to log in or when the new user has created. You can see this much of details in log files. Okay, so now we will explore the history file. History file will help us to see the commands that has been run by the TWR user. So go to home folder and click on TWR. And here select bash history file. Here you can see that it says it has gone through the var directory, okay, and has changed something with the index.php, and then has created a folder with credit card numbers. Okay, then we have sample numbers. So actually hacker has got access to this file and it has actually uploaded some of the stolen credit card numbers so that others can view it through our system. And it has also stolen password hashes from the shadow file. Okay, so now we will find out if that file that TWR downloaded to their home directory is malicious or not. So we will need to upload a file to the VirusTotal because hacker has downloaded and executed a file for Linux with the name shell.elf. Okay, this file, here it is at the last line. So we'll upload this file to the VirusTotal. So let's save this file, this one, shell.elf. Just right click on it, select extract files, go to desktop, then image, and save it here. Click OK, minimize the tool, and let me open the browser. Now upload the file. So desktop, image, and shell. Open it. it says the file is malicious. So let's explore more. So open Autopsy tool again, go to where and then logs. Now click on Apache 2 folder. Here click on access.log. This file actually tracks events on a Linux system for a hosted website. So here below, if you scroll down and read it carefully, you will come to know that someone from the different IP address has used nmap. Okay, see, it says nmap.org, and this is the IP address from which the attackers has performed the attack. And someone has also accessed the directory, credit card directory, and someone has also accessed the shadow file as well. Okay, so we have got a lot of information just by reading the logs. Now let's move to the web root directory to see what actually hacker has did. So we have where, inside where it is www. Select the directory and read the information from index.php, this one. You can see it says this site has been defaced. So the next step is to look into the credit card directory. So inside www, let me scroll up and you will see credit card number. Now open this file numbers.txt. Now you can see the details. So these are the details which hackers has uploaded. See, a hacked system is always a company's liability. So this way you can create an image, load an image, and then analyze the data and then export the file as well. Now you will learn how to perform forensic investigation for Windows servers using Autopsy. We will use Autopsy for thorough examination of Windows artifacts like registry files, scheduled tasks, and file timestamps, shedding light on past activities. Specifically for the IIS server, analyzing the IIS logs will uncover valuable insights about network operations. This video equips you with knowledge about key forensic artifact locations on a Windows server, enhancing your familiarity with the investigative process. Before we jump into the practical part, first let's understand 5 important terms. First, registry. The Windows operating system houses a centralized database known as the registry, which securely stores crucial configurations, user data, installed programs, and system settings. Next is WRR, Windows Registry Recovery. WRR is a powerful tool that autonomously extracts essential information from Windows registry files, simplifying the process of parsing and analyzing key data. SAM. The Security Accounts Manager or SAM file is an integral part of Windows, safeguarding user account information and managing access permissions across the system. System. As a vital Windows file, system contains valuable data concerning computer profile settings, including critical services and configurations. Last is Autopsy. A versatile and free forensic analysis program, Autopsy facilitates the examination of forensic images, empowering investigators to meticulously dissect and interpret digital evidence. Now let's see the practical. In this video, you will learn how to load the acquired hard drive into Autopsy tool. So first, let's open the tool. So double click on Autopsy. It's loading, so let's wait. Here we are actually creating a new case. Now click on New Case. Provide case name. So here we will type Windows Server. Now in base directory we will click on Browse. Go to Desktop. Select the image folder and click on Next. Here in the case number we will type Windows Server again. So Win Server. And in name of the examiner we will use student as always. Here first option is selected by default. So we will proceed with disk image or VM file. Click on Next. Now here click on Browse. Go to Desktop. Open the image folder. Here, click on this file and select open. Click on next. Here, leave all boxes checked. We need all these options. So simply click on next. Now, the tool will begin processing. The process is completed, so click on finish and done. So we have loaded the image into this autopsy tool. So starting a new case is typically the first step when using computer forensics. Okay. So any software you use, like in our case, we are using autopsy. So we must create a new case, give it a name, case number, examiner name, etc. In this video, you will learn how to analyze common locations for evidence or traces. So first, let me turn off Windows Defender because we are collecting traces. So go to search and type Windows Defender, hit enter. Go to settings and turn off the real-time protection because it will block the harmful files and we will not able to collect the evidence. Now we are on this tool. So first click on the plus icon here in the front of data sources. Now again click the plus icon. Select volume 2 here. Now click on the plus icon in front of volume 2. You can see similar options both right and left side. Now let's explore Windows. Inside Windows, search for System32 folder. Here it is. So click on plus icon and now look for log files folder. Here it is. Again expand it and select MSFTP SVC and here click on this file. Go to text and scroll down. Read this file and you will know that there are hundreds of attempts for login from the administrator users. Now it looks suspicious because why should an administrator will perform a failed attempt so many times? So it was likely a brute force attack or maybe dictionary attack on the FTP server using administrator account. So this is the one proof. Now let's search for FTP root directory. So let's go to volume 2 on the left side and look for inet pubs and here is FTP root. Now you can see as per date and time there are many files that were uploaded during the time frame. Okay. So here this file looks suspicious. So just right click on it and go to extract files. See how you will know that this file is suspicious. You have to read the content of each and every file. Okay, but there are thousands of files, so that is not possible. So we will look for the details like date and time when the file was created or modified or last used. Okay, that will help us and we will match the date and time with the alert we have received that your system may be compromised on any one of the monitoring softwares. They will send us the notification that this particular system has something wrong. Okay, so we will verify with date and time and then we will look into the matter, file matter. We will read the file's data and then we will come to know. So now let's save it. So right click on it, go to extract files. Now we will save all the files inside export folder. So click on save and OK. Now let me open the Chrome and let's open VirusTotal. Open virustotal.com. This website helps us to analyze suspicious files, domains, IPs and URLs to detect malware and other breaches. So we will upload the saved file here. So here on the desktop, we will go to images and then Windows Server export folder, and this keylogger file. So open this file. Now see what VirusTotal says about this file. It says it is likely to be a malware. So let me minimize this and let's proceed. Now let's go to Windows folder again and look for a folder called task. Here it is. Now let's have a look on this file. Go to text and read the data, because this is the file which has been created on that date when we have received a suspicious IP. Okay, we have received the alert or notification. Now when we open it, you will see it contains cmd.exe. Okay, so this is the command which is used to open the command prompt. Okay, now these are the commands and not the file, so we can't upload this file on VirusTotal. So let's see some more evidence. Now let's look for the startup folder. So here we are in volume 2. Inside this we will search for program data. So here it is. Expand it. Now Microsoft, Windows, start menu, and programs. Inside programs we will search for startup. So here is the startup folder. Now you will notice that there are two files present from the same day. So you can see .batch file. So click on it and you can read the details. Now this update file looks suspicious, so we will also collect it as evidence. And let's move. So hackers will also place any harmful file on Windows System 32, and there are a lot of files in these directories. So it is a good place to hide something like malware. So let's go to volume 2 again and navigate to Windows folder. So let me minimize this. Here it is. Here we have a column called created time. So let me drag this column next to name column. Now just double click on it to sort it by the date when the files were created. Now click on this again. Okay. Now here we see a file called fgdump.exe. So let me extract and save this file so that we can scan it on VirusTotal. Click on OK. And now let's go to VirusTotal. Click on upload file, choose file, and we will select fgdump. So open it and let's wait. Okay, so this is a harmful file. So VirusTotal says that this file look malicious. Okay, now minimize it and let's get back to autopsy. Here in Windows and then System 32, let me scroll down, expand it, and look for a folder called WinEVT. Okay, Windows event. Expand it and now click on logs. Now we will look for three important logs. First is security, then comes the system, and last is application. So here we have security. So click on each option one by one, then click on extract and save them. Now repeat the same process for system, and now on application. Done. Now let me minimize the tool and let's go to image folder and then Windows Server, export. Now let me click on this application file. It will open in event viewer. You can see it says number of events is 2472. Okay, just in application. Now let's look for system. So double click on system logs. Now scroll down and look for date and time when you have received the alert. Now here, look on this particular event. Okay, here you can read the details. It says the Windows Update Service entered the stopped state. You can also go to details, and if you read the log just above it, this one, and go to general, you can see it says the Windows Firewall Service entered the stopped state. It means first the firewall was stopped working and then the Windows Update Service was stopped working. So we can contact the network administrator and ask if it was a shutdown, and if not, then probably the hacker was likely the culprit. Okay, so this way we can read the logs, collect the evidence, and then reach to a judgment. So let me close this and let's get back to our autopsy tool. Now let's go to system32 and then config directory. Click on the config folder and here we will look for SAM. So SAM, security and system. So let's save them one by one. So we will extract the file first. So extract files, save, and then OK. Now for the security, extract, save, and OK. And now look for system. Here it is. So extract, save, and OK. Okay, so we have collected a lot of evidence inside the export folder. Those were the files or suspicious links. We can scan them on virustotal.com, and if they are just the information like this happened on this date and this time, then we will read it and record it for our own purpose. So there are many places to look for evidence of an intrusion on a Windows system. So you have seen a lot of examples here. So master them, they will help you with the process of forensic investigation. In this video, you will learn how to export the registry using Windows Registry Recovery Tool, that is WRR tool, this one, here it is. So just double click on it to open this tool. Now go to File and select Open. Now here we will go to Image folder and then Windows Server and then Export. And let's open SAM. Now here on the left side, click on SAM. And now click on Groups and Users. Click on the plus icon in front of Users and now click on Administrator. So here on the right side, you will see SID of administrator user, which is 500. So by default, administrator accounts will always have a SID of 500. Now click on guest account and view the SID, which is 501. So remember, guest account have always a SID of 501. So close the SAM, go to File, Open, and select System, and go to Services and Drivers. Here, let me expand the name column so we have more details, and you can see their full names to look for any suspicious. Now this will tell us whether a service will start on the system. Once done, click on Network Configuration and then TCP IP. And you can verify the IP address here. It says 192.168.1.10. See, when you receive the security breach alert, you will always be notified with the IP address that this IP address has been compromised. Okay, so any system with this IP address has a security breach. So we can verify the IP address from here as well. Now we need one more file with the name software. So let me open the autopsy tool. And here we have a software. So just extract it and save it. Now let's open this file software. Select the file and click on Open. Now click on Windows installation from the left side and just view the system install date, this one. Okay, so we have system installation date and time, which is very important thing. Now the next thing is click on startup applications. So we will know that which processes will auto startup when we start the operating system, right? So these are the important files which we need to analyze each and every time whenever security breach happens. See, we need WRR tool to view the registry values, and to get the copy of those registry files we will use autopsy tool. So the system, security, SAM and software registry files are located inside the Windows folder, then system32, then config directory. And these four, namely system, security, SAM and software registry files, provide us very important information about the specific settings of a Windows computer. Securing Windows is vital for any company or organization's IT infrastructure. With its widespread adoption in homes, organizations, and businesses, understanding how to protect and update the operating system becomes paramount. Implementing best practices for securing Microsoft Windows is crucial for safeguarding valuable assets and ensuring the integrity of an organization's digital environment. In this course, you will engage in the process of patching a Microsoft Windows system to address various security related issues. These issues may range from default username and passwords to vulnerable protocols like FTP and Telnet, as well as inadequately configured web services. Windows systems, being extensively used in the industry, are often targeted by attackers. Failing to secure them properly can result in severe consequences such as data leaks and costly remediation efforts. While the Windows operating system was once criticized for its security vulnerabilities, Microsoft has diligently worked to overcome this reputation. The newer versions of Windows available today are recognized for their significantly enhanced security features and robustness. By effectively addressing security concerns, organizations can mitigate risks and fortify the overall integrity of their Windows-based IT environments. In this video, you will learn how we can exploit Windows servers with a vulnerability that is classified as severe, which means it can do a large amount of damage. First of all, let's check the IP address of our own system. So if config, that is interface configuration, ETH0, Ethernet 0, hit enter, and here is our IP, this one. So our IP address is 192.168.1.50. Now first let's check whether our target system is live. So ping IP of the target, which is 192.168.1.100, then -C4. Okay, here I have used -C4 because I want my system to automatically stop after 4 ping attempts. So first let me clear the screen. Now we will perform nmap because we want to scan that which port or services are running on our system and if there is any port open. So nmap 192.168.1.100. The process is completed. See, our goal is to increase the security of Windows, but first we will perform an attack on the Windows server. So here you can see port number 21 is open, okay, which is for FTP. So we will use FTP. First let's create a file. So echo, let's say this is a fake file. Save it into demo.mp3. Now we will use FTP command to connect to the server. So FTP, then the target IP, again 1.100. Here you can see it asks for name, username and password. Okay, so first in name we will type FTP, and here in password, here you can see it says anonymous access allowed. It means if you type password it is okay, and if you leave it blank and just hit enter, it will still give you the access. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether you type the password or not. So we will not going to type the password. So let me hit enter, and you can see we have got the access. So here in FTP we will use ls So you can see the name of all the files available. Now let's type get, let's say flag.txt file. Okay, the file has been downloaded. Now we can also send our file that which we have created. Okay, so put name of the file, so demo.mp3, send. So we have downloaded the flag file from the target system and we have sent the file which we have created, which is intentionally vulnerable. Okay, so we have sent this file to that system. Okay, done. Now simply type bye and we are out. Now let's read the content of flag. So cat and then flag.txt. So this is the data which is stored inside flag file. Now let me use nmap again. So nmap 192.168.1.100. Let's see the output. You can also see that port HTTP is open as well, which is port number 80. Okay. Nowadays, most people use HTTPS because that is the secure version and port number is 443. Now we will test if the website is functioning for company purposes. So for this, let me close the terminal and let's open a browser. Here we have Internet Explorer. So here in the URL, we will type the IP address. So HTTP 192.168.1.100. Hit enter. Now you can see the default web page for Internet Information Services, that is IIS, and it has not been configured. So close the browser. Now let me open the terminal and let's perform nmap one more time. Here in the output we can see that file and print sharing option is open. So let's use SMB client -L and then the target IP address, which is 192.168.1.100. Now it's asking for the password. Here in the password, simply hit enter. And now let's open the browser again. And this time let's open https www.google.com, and in Google we will search for SMB exploit for Windows Server. Okay, now here you can mention any version you are targeting. So the latest is 2022. Okay, but for now we will see for the older version, let's say 2019 or 2016. Here you can see a vulnerability which says SMB vuln MS 17010. Okay, so let me close the browser and let me clear the screen. Now we will initialize the database for Metasploit. So we will use MSFDB, that is Metasploitable database init. Okay, INIT. Hit enter and it says starting database. So let's wait. Done. Now we will start the Metasploit. So we will use MSF console, that is Metasploit console. So it says starting the Metasploitable framework, and here we are in the MSF. So let's search for the vulnerability. So search MS 17010. So we are searching for this particular exploit, and here are the details we have got. So these are the available exploits. Okay, along with their disclosure date, rank, description, etc. So use exploit / Windows slash SMB slash the name. Press enter. Done. Now we will find out the relevant information about this exploit. So simply type info and we will get all the details here. Okay, now the next step is critical to our remediation. Here you can see references. So we will open the first reference. Simply right click on this link and click on open link. Okay, so here you can see that some Windows systems that have not been patched or secured or hardened will have a critical vulnerability in this case, right? You can read all the details here. So just scroll down. Okay, let me go back to the terminal. Now we have to set the remote host. So set our host, our target IP 192.168.1.100. Hit enter. Now we will check if the system is vulnerable to this exploit or not. So simply type check and hit enter. Done. Now let's exploit the system. So exploit, hit enter. And you can see it is executed. Now we will type shell command to get the command prompt of the target system. And you can see we are already inside the Windows server. So we will add a new account to our target system. So we will use net user, let's say Harry, and then we will assign the password and simply type add. So we are actually adding the Harry user with this password into our target system. You can see it says the command completed successfully. It means the Harry user has been created on Windows server. Now we will add the account to the administrators group so that user account can get the full access or more power. So net local group administrators, then Harry, add. Done. So we have created a user with the name Harry and we have added that user to the administrators group. Now let's exit from the target system. So we will use exit. Now again exit. So in this particular video, you have learned that how to scan a remote system for open ports, and we are able to detect the FTP port is open and is working because it has anonymous access. So we have downloaded the file, we have sent our file to the target system, then we have tried Metasploitable framework to get the access inside target system, and then we have created a user, and at last we have added that user into the administrators group. In this video, you will learn about the hardening process for Windows Server. So here we are using Windows Server, and let's open the server manager. Now go to manage, click on remove roles and features. So if you remember in the previous video, we have found that this server has FTP vulnerability and the port is open allowing anonymous access. So we are actually removing it. Simply click next, again next. Okay, here we have to examine the service. So here we have web server, that is IIS. So let me explore it. Here you can see FTP server. So let's uncheck this box and click on next. Leave all options to default and click on next. And now click on remove. It's processing. You can see the removal progress. You can see it says a restart is pending on server. Okay, so close the box, close server manager, and let's restart the system. And by the time, let's switch to Kali. So we are on Kali Linux. Now let's try nmap 192.168.1.100. Now you can see that FTP has been removed from the list of open ports and services. Okay, it means we have increased the security level on Windows Server. Now let me switch back to Windows Server. Here you can see three users: administrator, Harry and guest. So first let me log in with the administrator user. Now let's open the command prompt. Now we will check the status of the guest account. So net user guest. Now we will set the status of the guest account. So net user guest slash active colon no. So we are setting the status active as no for guest account. Hit enter. The command completed successfully. Now let's verify. Okay, now account active is set to no. If you scroll up and see, when we have run this command earlier, we can see account active is yes. Okay, which means guest account is active at that time. So for the purpose of security, we have disabled the guest account. So let me scroll up. Now let me switch back to the Kali Linux. So SMB client -L 192.168.1.100. Okay, so it's asking for the password. So leave it blank and hit enter. And you can see it says session setup failed. Right? It means we are no longer able to enumerate the shares. Okay? We cannot share anything. We can't download anything. We can't send anything. Earlier we have downloaded the file and we have also sent the file to the target system. Now it is not possible. By disabling the guest account, it prevents the uncredentialed enumeration of shares, and it will also prevent the exploit. Okay, so let's verify. So exploit and hit enter. You can see it says access denied. Right? So we are not able to perform the exploit as well. Again, we have improved the security. Now let me switch back to Windows Server. Now we will view the administrative accounts on the system. So we will use net local group, then the name of the group, which is administrators. You can see administrators group have two accounts. One is administrator, which is the default one, and another is Harry. Now this is suspicious because we have not created the Harry user. Now let's change the status of Harry user to no. So net user Harry active no. That's it. Okay, so we have performed the exploits and we have secured our Windows Server from those attacks. So what are the things which we need to take care of in order to improve the security of the Windows Server? So we can disable the guest account. We can keep our Windows up to date. Always use encrypted protocols instead of using the plain text. Now remove all the default configurations from the system, whether it is your own system or for your websites. Check your administrative accounts time to time and keep an eye on unauthorized accounts. If you found any, just remove it. And always remove the anonymous access. So these are some of the common tips which help you to improve the security of your Windows machine. Securing Linux is important because of its extensive adoption in company and organizational server infrastructure. With Linux being widely utilized in servers and cloud environments, learning how to safeguard its configurations and settings become crucial in preserving an organization's assets. By mastering the best practices for securing Linux, one can effectively fortify the operating system, ensuring the protection of critical resources within the organization. So here we have two virtual machines. One is Kali Linux and other is Ubuntu Linux. So Ubuntu is our target and Kali is the attacker machine. So first we will exploit the target system and then we will secure it. Before we move towards the practical, first let's understand 5 important terms. First is Kali Linux. Kali Linux, a cutting-edge Linux distribution, specializes in advanced penetration testing, digital forensics, ethical hacking, and network security assessments. Next is Anonymous FTP. Unlocking the power of file exchange, Anonymous FTP enables users to effortlessly connect to FTP sites, freely uploading and downloading files without the need for an account. Then Apache. Powering websites with efficiency. Apache is a widely adopted web server software primarily deployed in Linux, though it is also compatible with Windows, ensuring seamless hosting and serving of web content. Next is Nmap. Enhancing system security, Nmap acts as a vigilant port scanner, expertly detecting and reporting open or closed ports on the remote systems, assisting in comprehensive vulnerability assessments. Last is UID of 0. The UID of 0, granting users root level privileges, empowering them with unrestricted control and access to critical system resources. First, let's find out the IP address of our own system. So if config eth0. So 192.168.1.50 is our IP address. Now let's ping with our target system to find out whether it is live or not. So 192.168.1.25 -C4. You can see the system is replying. It means the system is live. Now I have used here -C4 because I want this pinging process to stop automatically after 4 attempts. Now let's perform the scan using Nmap on our target system. So 168.1.25. Using Nmap is very simple, very easy. Just type Nmap followed by the target IP. And here we have the output, and you can see it says port FTP is open and port number is 21. Then port SSH is open with port number 22. Then Telnet, then HTTP, okay, and then SMB services. Okay, first we will try to find out that what operating system is running on our target. So for this we will use Nmap -A. So we have to use parameter -A to find out the OS and then the IP of the target machine. Press enter and let's wait. So here's the output, and you can see the operating system name is Ubuntu. Okay, now notice one thing. Target system is running the operating system Ubuntu, which is a Linux flavor, and it has also an open port called FTP. And see, FTP will send the data in plain text, okay, using port number 21. So it's a serious security issue. So first of all, let's use FTP. So we are connecting with the target system using FTP. Now we have to provide the username and password. So username is FTP and leave the password as blank. Simply hit enter and we have got the access to FTP. Now let's use ls to find out the list of files and folders available there. Okay, so here is backup. So let's go inside backup. Now we are inside backup. So let's do ls. Okay, you can see here two important files in Linux, passwd and shadow file. So now let's download both of them. So get passwd, received. Now get shadow, downloaded. Just exit from here and we are back on our terminal. So let's read the content of the files which we have downloaded. So first we will use tail passwd. See, we are using here tail command. Okay, so by default, if we don't provide any parameter with this command, it will show us the last 10 lines of this file. So passwd, you can see last 10 lines of the passwd file. So here we have the name of all the users present on our target system along with their UID, GID and their home directory. Okay, so we have a lot of details here. Here, notice one thing, the user tour, that is TWR, has a UID of 0, which is not a good thing because 0 is provided to the root. Okay, so there can be only one account with this UID. Now let's read the last 10 lines of the shadow file. Because of the security purpose, the passwords are stored into shadow file in encrypted form. So here you can see the hashes of the password, like this is the hash for the student and this is the hash for the tour user. So now we will try to crack these hashes. So for this we will use John and then shadow. Just hit enter and let's wait. Okay, so we have got the password in plain text. So user tour has password tour, user Ubuntu has the password Ubuntu, user student has the password as password, and user root, which is the main user, will also have the password as password. Okay, so these are the simple passwords just created for the purpose of learning only. Now let's scan the target again. So you can see port SSH is also open and port number is 22. So let's try to log in with SSH-L with root user, then the target IP. Here type yes and hit enter. It asks for the password, so use password PASSWORD. Now you can see we are acting as root and on the target system. So let's exit from here. Let's nmap again. Okay, this time we will use telnet. So telnet target IP. So login name is student and password is password. You can see we have successfully established the SSH session. Let's exit from here. Now let's try nmap again to see what more can we do. You can see HTTP is also open. So let me open the browser. Here type HTTP and then the IP address of the target machine. So 192.168.1.25. You can see the default web page. Okay, so just close it and let's do nmap one more time. You can see that the file and print sharing is open by the list of the ports. So let's try to connect with SMB service. So SMB client -L 192.168.1.25. Press enter. So let's create a directory mkdir/share. Done. Now we will mount this share directory. So we have created /share. Now let's mount it. So we will use mount -t cifs 192.168.1.25 /myshare and then /share. We are actually mounting the remote share my share folder on 192.168.1.25 to the share folder that we have created on our Kali system. Okay, so just press enter and it asks for the password. Simply hit enter and done. Now we will create a file and write some data in it for our target system. So echo this is a fake file. Okay, under /share folder with a name demo.mp3. Hit enter and done. So in this video you have learned how to scan the target system for open ports and then use the vulnerabilities like FTP, SSH, HTTP, etc. Now in the next video you will learn how to protect your system or how to increase the security of your system to protect it from various attacks. Now we must provide the password. So PASSWORD. Okay, so here you can see the daemon. So let's just copy this path /user/sbin/no login. So we are actually providing no login shell to the root user. By default root has /bin/bash. So we will remove it and we will say no login shell. Okay, now click on save and close it. Now to verify whether we have disabled the root account is working or not, so su space root. Okay, so we are switching the user account to the root account. Let me type the password and you can see it says this account is currently not available. Let's move towards the next step. So in the previous video, we have noticed that there is one more user with a name TOOR, and it also has the same ID as the root user, which is 0. So let's verify sudo cat /etc passwd pipe grep double quotes x:0. And yes, you can see that there are two users with UID 0, root and tour. So let me delete this user. So we will use sudo. See, if you are not the root user, then you have the limited powers. So if you want to use the power of root, we will use the sudo command. Sudo userdel --force tour. Now let's verify whether the tour user is gone. So ID TOOR, it says no such user. Okay. Now we have one more user with the name Ubuntu. So we'll change its password from simple to complex. So for this, type sudo passwd and then the name of the user. Enter new password. So p@SSW0rd. Press enter. We have to retype the password, and password updated successfully. Now we will scan our own system using nmap. So sudo nmap 127.0.0.1. Okay, this is the IP address for the localhost. And you can see we have FTP, SSH, Telnet, HTTP. These are the open ports. So sudo apt-get remove vsftpd. So we are actually removing FTP, okay, using sudo powers, and this is the command for it. vsftpd is the package name. Yes. And done. Now let's remove telnet. So sudo apt-get remove telnetd. Yes, we want to continue, and done. Let me clear the screen. Now let's remove the Apache. So sudo apt-get remove Apache 2. Yes. Done. Now let's scan again. Okay, done. Now here you can see FTP, Telnet and HTTP are now gone from the list, but still we have SSH server. We have to keep the SSH server for Windows users on the network because they would need third-party tools like WinSCP to copy files and folders, and that might not be authorized tool. So we will keep SSH server. Instead, we will remove the anonymous access to the shares. So we have to edit the Samba configuration file. So sudo gedit /etc samba smb.conf. This is the configuration file for Samba. So we will edit this file in order to remove the anonymous access. So let me scroll down and let's look for share definition paragraph. Here it is. Let me increase the size. Okay. Now find this section with the name valid users. Here it is. So just remove this and instead we will type student here. Now click on save and close it. Let me clear the screen. And now we have to restart the Samba service. So we will use sudo service Samba restart. Now let me switch to the attacker machine and let's try to log in with the Samba. So smb client -L target IP assign password. You can see it says SMB1 disabled, no workgroup available. So we have performed the attacks and then we have secured our system from those attacks.